tonight we're going to have a look at deploying a Kubernetes cluster using Pulumi. In the past episodes, we've looked at deploying Azure container instances. Azure has a lot of things that are named very similarly to deploy containers, but we deployed container apps. There's a sample application that I have in the previous video's description, so you can go check that out if you're interested. If you're interested in the code for this, what we're going to build today, you can also check that out in the description below. We are going to take some of the code from the previous streams just so we can get started quicker and follow through the Pulumi tutorial on how to create a Kubernetes cluster and see how far we can get. So let's dig right in and make a start. So I have over here the guide, Pulumi Crosswork for Kubernetes. Unfortunately, I did a bunch of investigation into this, and it turns out that this guide is a bit out of date, and it's more geared towards TypeScript. So there is a kind of a GitHub repository around this, but it's all TypeScript and doesn't actually work because the API that Pulumi uses to set up, for example, the identity stuff, creating an Azure Active Directory application and service principal and all the rest of it, all of that changed the API, and they didn't update this guide. I did raise an issue, a GitHub issue, so hopefully that will get solved soon. I raised another issue asking for like a C# version of this. So hopefully at some point that will be available. But in the meantime, it means that we have to kind of go in here and migrate this TypeScript over to C#. So let's take a look at our C# project to start with. So if you create a Pulumi new Azure project, you'll get something similar to this, but then I'll just briefly run through what I changed. So I've copied across some variables here, some config from the Azure Container Apps version, because we're going to have very similar settings. So we're going to run a container, we're going to have to give it some memory and CPU, some replicas. We don't need that setting anymore. We'll have to give it an environment name, and I'm going to deploy two Kubernetes clusters, one in Canada Central and one in Northern Europe. Or I will change those locations later for something else. And then we'll have some common resources in a common location, so Northern Europe here. And I think that's just going to be like the Azure Monitor stuff is going to go in there, and maybe one or two other things. I have some constants over here, so some tag names that I'm going to apply to every resource I want to create. So I want to name the name of the application, the environment, development, production, whatever, and the location that the resource is in. So West US or whatever the location is. In the program, we just run a Kubernetes stack. In the stack so far, all I'm doing is creating a resource group, and I give that a name and a location. So this is just using the configuration here. The configuration is a bit funky. So in a previous episode, we looked at how we can enable unit testing. So I have a unit test over here that ensures that all resources have tags applied to them. And specifically, we want to make sure that we have the application tag, the environment tag, the location tag, all set up on all of our resources. So to do that, you have to kind of muck around with the configuration because it's not supported by default in Pulumi, unfortunately. So I had to create an interface for my configuration, and it just contains pretty much the things in the YAML file. And then over here is how we can get the config. So I new up a config, and then you call this require function, pass in the name of the configuration variable to pull out. So application name pulls out this application name over here. It adds the prefix on automatically, so that will return Umati over here. And another constant for the environment name. And yeah, that's it really. So I'm creating a resource group here, newing one up. I give it a name. So by convention, I'm giving it application name dash the name that's passed in here, dash common, dash the location. So, you know, Northern Europe or whatever, dash the environment. So development and dash, and then Pulumi will add a random string on the end. And then I also add some tags, and these are the tags that I'm adding by default. So if I run my unit test, it passes right now just because I don't have many resources and I'm setting the tags on this resource group. So if we carry on over here, and when I was digging into this, I tried to create so first of all, let's backtrack a little bit. The Kubernetes guide has split up the stacks into 6 different stacks, which I thought was interesting, and I'm not sure why they've done that. I'm just going to create one big stack for myself, and maybe split it out later. But we don't need everything in here, so we can skip some of these. So the first one, if we go here, is called identity, and it creates an Azure Active Directory application, a service principal, and so on and so forth. And it turns out this is only needed if you are, I forget the reason, we'll come back to the reason, but it's only needed if you're going to use a particular feature of Kubernetes specific to Azure. So we'll skip that one for now. And actually this code doesn't actually work. So the Pulumi API for creating an Azure AD application has totally changed. So you can't create that if you wanted to anyway. So we'll carry on with managed infrastructure. And this is where you create a virtual network. There's actually 2 ways to create a Kubernetes cluster in Azure. So one is by using the virtual network in Azure separately from Kubernetes. So you create a virtual network and a subnet and so on. And another way is using the Azure, it's not Azure CNI, is it Calico? The Calico networking stack, and that's integrated into Kubernetes and runs on the Kubernetes cluster itself as some services and things under the Kubernetes internal namespace. So we'll start off with this. So it turns out this is just, what are we doing here? We're just creating a virtual network and a subnet. And then later on down here, we're also creating an Azure Monitor workspace, analytics workspace. So we'll do that also. And then we're outputting the subnet ID and the log analytics workspace. So if we go over to C# code, we could just stick that code in here and try to migrate it. But I'm going to try, because we are trying to write some production ready code, I'm going to try and break up. I don't want to end up with a giant Azure Kubernetes stack file with loads of resources in the construct being created in the constructor here. So I'm going to try and break this up a little bit. There is a way to do that in Pulumi. So it's called creating these things called resources. And what you can do is inherit from this thing called a component resource, and then inside the constructor here, create the resource itself. I'm just going to comment out this code because it's TypeScript and we need to migrate it over to C#. So we need to create a virtual network. And there is a bunch of stuff in here that lets me do that, and I'm not sure which one I need. Azure Native Dev Test Lab. So when in doubt, check the Pulumi documentation. Let's have a look. Products. No, I can't remember where to go now. Docs. I want to go into the reference for API reference. Yep, Azure. And in the search, I want to search for virtual network. Oh, it's doing something. There we go, virtual network, and a load of stuff pops up. And then we can see here, what's this dev test lab version of virtual network? I'm not really sure. There are other network stuff. Oh, this is the one we need probably under the network thing. So we want, doesn't tell you what NuGet package you need, but looks like this is how you create a virtual network. So we're going to copy and paste that. And it's under Azure native.network. So we'll just stick that in the namespace. And we're using all the C#10 features here. And it can't find that. So I think Pulumi.Azure native. I have the latest stuff. I think. Let me just check. I have the latest NuGet packages. I don't need Pulumi.ad, Azure AD anymore, I think. Just gonna get latest on these packages. Give that a second. Let's go back to the documentation to see what. Let's search for Pulumi Azure native .network. Pulumi.Azure native. They don't have a huge number of packages, but maybe if I search for, just wondering if there's another package out there that I don't know about. So that's all updated now. Oh, schoolboy error. I just needed to put Pulumi at the beginning. Pulumi. There we go. And we're going to put in our name over here. We'll come up with our naming convention in a second. We'll add that. And we also need that namespace. And then in our address prefixes, we're gonna, okay. Oh, I'm just gonna go with 10.0 because I think it's just easier to remember. For some reason they had 10.2 in the example that they showed. The location, I'm gonna choose this is a good question. You know what? I'm gonna switch from using this back to sticking everything into the main constructor and then maybe breaking it up later on just so that it's easier to deal with. Come on, where's my namespace? I've lost my namespace. Not sure why that is happening. Visual Studio doesn't seem to be able to find namespaces. I need a common location here, so I'm going to go to my, no, I need to for each this, for each location in configuration dot locations, and we're going to create a new virtual network for each location because we're going to create multiple Kubernetes clusters for each location. And then we're going to stick that location there. resource group name is we're gonna create a new resource group here first as well. So we'll take that, and this is our resource group. The location goes here, and we can call this, what shall we call it? This is our Kubernetes resource group, so let's call it Kubernetes, all lowercase. The name here, we're going to go with configuration.application. We'll copy this naming convention here, and we're going to go with configuration application name. This is a virtual network. Yeah, we'll see how that works. There is a limit on the size of the name you can enter here, and it's unfortunately in Azure it's different for every single resource. We're going to pass in the resource group name here and the virtual network name. Not sure why we have to pass this, given that we already have specified a name up here. So I'm just going to comment that out for now and see what it generates for us. So we have our virtual network, and now we need to set up some outputs, and I've forgotten how to do that, so I'm just going to quickly go over here and open a new instance of Visual Studio and fire up the old Azure Container Apps Pulumi sample that I created. Let's have a look. It's opened in my other window. Come on Visual Studio. Here we go. And what we're going to do here is the convention I used elsewhere was not to put the application name at the beginning. Log analytics dash location dash environment name. This might be too long, so I'm going to go with virtual network location environment name to start with. Then I also need tags. I forgot to add tags. Tags added in, and then I forgot how to do the outputs, so we'll just put in our virtual networks as outputs over here. We'll call that virtual network, and have output.apply, I think it was. Output.all. And we need an enumerable of input. And I can't remember how I did this before. So I'm just going to quickly remind myself. Oh, I created a list and then I did this. Cool. Let's copy that. Paste that in there. These are the virtual networks. Var virtual network equals new list. And what type did I use over here? List of output. Okay. So for now, we're just going to have a tuple with one thing in it. Oh, it has to contain two things, so we'll just put foo for now, because we're going to have lots of outputs for each Kubernetes cluster. So dot add virtual network dot apply container app configuration dot apply. Virtual network. What are the outputs that we're interested in here? You know what? I'm not sure we are interested in any outputs just yet. I thought we'd just do some. Let's leave it. Let's just create something to start with. Let's see if that works. Non-null property. Virtual networks must not contain a non-null value. And we'll comment that out. And we'll go over here and get my terminal, and we'll go Pulumi stack deploy. I can't remember what the command was now. Pulumi up. Of course. This is what happens when you go on holiday. You forget how to do things. And I'm just going to change the stack name here and give it a message. Use the -- stack flag. I did. Make sure you pass the fully qualified name org project stack. Oh. There we go. Now I can deploy. You have to be in the right folder. You have to be in the folder where the YAML files are. Does not exist. Yes, I would not like to create that. So it's going to go off and create the resource group now, and then the virtual network, and then we can go and have a look at it in Azure. The stack name is weird. Maybe I shouldn't have called it that. We'll have a look at that and see what it looks like in the Pulumi website over here. Projects. Yeah, I shouldn't have named it that thing. We'll destroy that and do it again. We've got an exception. Missing required configuration variable. Common location. Please set a value using the command common location value. We have that. Oh, it's because I used the wrong stack file. Stack command. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete this. Why did I open that? Try that again. Failed to decrypt encrypted configuration value. Authentication failed. Okay. So if you look at a previous stream of mine, to get all the permissions to deploy to Azure, you have all of these settings. These are encrypted. Well, this client secret is encrypted, so you won't be able to use this to deploy to Azure using my credentials. But it's a bit of a faff having to set this up. So I created a cake script that does it for you. And if you're not familiar with cake build, it's worth having a look at it. Cake build, this guy. And it lets you write C# and do a bunch of things like run .NET cake, and that will run this clean, and it will delete all the bin and object directories and an artifacts directory that I've created. You can run .NET restore, .NET build, .NET test, and output a bunch of code coverage and TRX and HTML reports for the test. And then I created this one, update service principal, which I run just like this over here, and I run the cake command like this, and then I pass in some parameters. So what's my stack and what's my service principal name, and this runs. I'm going to run it off screen because it does output some secret variables that I need to paste into. I think they're done. They should update this for me. Okay, so you can see the client secret has been updated here, which is all good, and it's changed some of the formatting as well of this file. I'm going to take some of this information here and clear that screen and bring it back. So now if I do cd source infrastructure and run Pulumi up again, that should work now. I had that previous client secret and everything just hanging around from a different project, so that's why I think it didn't work. And 6 to create. Let's see what it's creating. Resource group, Kubernetes resource group in Canada, Central, Northern Europe, and a common one. 2 virtual networks. And it's creating. Should be pretty quick because I don't have much in there. Let's go over to Azure and refresh. Where's the refresh button? There it is. So we have, what is this? Network Watcher RG. I have no idea what that is, how that got created. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to check out what that Network Watcher thing is later. Network Watcher. Maybe there's a setting to put this in a different resource group. Looks like something that's created as part of your virtual network. And this traffic manager is still showing up even though it's deleted, so you can ignore that. So we have a virtual network now, which is cool. And now we just need to create a subnet. So let's go back to our stack and create a subnet. What was the virtual network name that it created? Let's just check that as well really quick. I'm not sure how you check this because I'm not an expert in Azure networking. Address space. Subnets. Properties. There's the name. Resource group location. Yeah, not really sure. I think the name is this, I suspect, but I'm not sure. So we'll carry on. Next thing we need to do is create a new subnet. So what we'll do is we'll go var subnet equals new subnet, and we'll take this naming convention thing going over here, stick that in there, and we'll do new subnet args and fill this in. And we need to pass in some tags. Always need to pass in tags. Resource group name, we always need to do that. Do we not have tags here? Does the subnet not have tags? I guess that makes sense. It's a kind of a... Oh, Visual Studio can be so slow in going to definition lately. Subnet name. There's no outputs. No tags. Alright, we'll get rid of tags. And we'll go virtual network name equals virtual network.name. Thank you. Address prefix equals, and we'll go call this so this needs to be this, but with a number over here that starts with 0. So we'll go var address prefix index equals 0, and we'll stick that in there, and we'll go plus plus address prefix index at the end, and this is going to be /16/24. Makes sense. And we have our virtual network all set up. So let's run this, add subnets. We'll create some subnets now. I'm doing all right for time. Half an hour in, and we've already created our virtual network successfully. Maybe I've spoken too soon, but yeah, we're done. Let's just check that. So if we go to subnets, we should have a subnet now. Did it create? Oh, failed. Resource name is invalid. The name can be up to 80 characters long. It must begin with a word character, and it must end with a word character or with an underscore. The name may contain word characters or... So what name did I give? Is this can't be more than 80 characters, can it? Let's check that. This is the frustrating thing with Visual Studio, not Visual Studio, Azure. How many characters is that? There's this thing at the bottom here. That's 32 characters. That's not a lot. So it must be complaining about the name may contain word characters, or so we allow dashes. That's all good. Development probably doesn't like the suffix on the end. Maybe. Let's go back. Bring that back. We didn't have a name here, in fact. Weirdly enough. Oh, we did. Name. What is the name that they're using? Let's go back here. Name. Oh, it's just a project name. Interesting. Okay. I wonder why they do that. Maybe remove the dash on the end. And we need to have the index, address prefix index in here. Otherwise, we're going to get conflicts. If we create multiple subnets. No, that's fine. I think we're only creating one subnet. Yes, we're only creating one subnet. In fact, we don't need this. We don't need that. We don't need this. We don't need... So this is going to be 10.1 or 10.0. We'll start with 10.0 /24. Get rid of that. So if we create multiple subnets, we'll increment this number, but right now we only need one subnet, so that's all good. As I say, not an expert on Azure virtual networking. I have tried to learn, but these address spaces things are interesting. Let's try that again. Add subnets. If I was to add multiple subnets, I'd probably put a number in here. So subnet dash number dash location environment. So I could preempt that and do that now. It'd probably be a good idea to do so. Let's see if it can create it this time. Got no dash on the end. I think that's what the issue was. 2 created. Excellent. So if we go back here, refresh, and we have our subnet with 251 IP addresses available to it. And I think I'm going to do that. So I think I'm going to add an index in here, subnet 0. Or maybe just subnet 0. I don't know. Put a dash there, I think. Okay, so we have our virtual networks. Now what we also need to do is create our Azure Analytics workspace. So this goes in a common location. It will go in the common resource group. So I'm just going to copy and paste that there. Control C that, and we have that in our Azure Container Apps code as well. So I'm just going to copy and paste that from here. We have a function that gets the workspace. So this guy here is creating a workspace. What namespace? Why can't it find the namespace? I'm not really sure. Not sure what's going on there, but operational insights. I suspect that Pulumi has so many namespaces that that Visual Studio just chokes on being able to find the right namespace when you do control dot. So log analytics dash location dash configuration environment, and then we're giving it a resource group name, retention policy, a SKU, setting up some tags. So up here we're going to go var workspace equals get workspace, and we're going to give it a location, common location, and a resource group, which is the common resource group. So we've created the workspace now, and I'm just going to move this stuff over here into a separate function also, which creates a virtual network and a subnet. Should I do that now? Let's leave it for now. We'll come back to that in a moment. So that's it. We're done. We have a subnet ID as an output and a log analytics workspace as an ID. So maybe that would be a good idea. So subnet ID, that's the output. Subnet ID, outputs dot add all dot, what is that function that I need to call? I always forget this. This stuff is a bit dot apply. There we go. Subnet dot id dot apply. Maybe we'll just go with a string here. and we'll just add that for now. And here we'll go with an immutable array of subnet IDs, and this will be outputs.select apply semicolon, and we're done. So add output, so add subnet ID as output, and we'll deploy that one more time, and we should see the subnet IDs in the terminal here. I'm using a preview version of .NET. What? That's interesting. I have a global.json file here. I should be using 6.0.100. Not sure why it's saying that. Built the code. Delete the old subnet IDs, create the new ones with the 0 in it. Creating failed. Find out why in a second. It's probably the naming convention for the subnet again. Maybe you're not allowed numbers in it. I can't remember what the error was last time. Again, Azure people, if you're watching, please fix the naming conventions and make it consistent across the board. It's really difficult to have to muck around with the names of Azure resources all the time. Is it going to tell me why? Nope, not yet. Maybe if I scroll up. The name can contain 80 characters, must begin with a word character, must end with a word character or with an underscore. Oh, it looks like no numbers allowed. Hold on, is not a valid virtual network. Subnet is not valid. Subnet is not valid. Okay. Maybe let's get rid of the number for now and try it again. See if that works. Is it going to work? It's again saying a preview version of .NET. I'm just going to quickly check what .NET version version is saying. Oh, why is it saying I'm using a preview version? You know what it is? It's because I think allow pre-release should be false, and then it will work. Let's set that up. Yeah, I think I have that usually in most places, but I missed it here. Subnet IDs, so now we have these guys, and it did work. So we're not allowed numbers in the subnet name, which is kind of crazy because you'd want the subnet number in there really if you're creating multiple subnets, but okay, whatever. Let's go to number 3, cluster configuration. So this is where we actually create the cluster. and you can tell that that is a lot longer. There's a ton of stuff going on here, and some of it you shouldn't do. So this guy over here allows you to SSH into your Kubernetes cluster. I would say don't bother with this. You don't need to SSH into your Kubernetes cluster. If you do, there's maybe something going wrong. So I'm going to skip that step. Next step, we'll create this Kubernetes cluster over here. So we'll copy and paste that. And inside the for each, we will make some space, paste that in, and comment that out, because we're going to migrate this TypeScript over to C#. So we're going to create a new Kubernetes cluster. What class is that? I can't find it. Azure Container Service. So we don't have that NuGet package. Manage NuGet packages. .container service. Let's see if we can find that. Browse. Create the AKS cluster. Why can't I find a Kubernetes cluster? Oh, could that be it? Maybe I need this. Let's try it. So we have Pulumi.Kubernetes. We didn't need Azure AD. I'll get rid of that. And we don't need random. I'll get rid of that as well. Yeah, I was trying to, in the past, try some stuff out. This is not working. So connected cluster, what is this? Maybe if we go to the Kubernetes, here we go. Connected cluster, get connected cluster. Can't seem to find anything. This is not what we want. Is it Kubernetes configuration? Nope. Maybe there's a separate package here. Kubernetes. I don't know why this is. I wish this would filter. I installed this, but we'll need that later, but we need the Azure native thing to create a cluster. I'm not sure how to do that just yet. How-to guides. Cluster and Helm chart. Here we go. There's a how-to guide on how to create a cluster here. Let's view the code. Oh, cool. Private key, managed cluster. Okay, whatever. So we'll grab this. And let's see what they're doing. They're creating an application, service principal, a password. Then down here, they're using it. Okay. Let's see if we can paste this in here. New managed cluster. And we'll copy the naming convention we've been using and just call this Kubernetes. I always put the thing that we're creating in here. I'm not going to call it managed cluster because that doesn't make any sense to me. And we'll fix this indentation slightly. What's going on with the indentation here? Resource group name. So we're going to take this resource group, that's fine. I think this indentation is gone wrong because this is a list of things, new input list. This syntax looks really strange to me. It's just a block of code and somehow it knows what to do here. And it's really spooky. I don't really understand why. I'm just going to do that so I understand what's going on. Got trailing comma in there. I'm using style cop, so it's complaining about stuff. I'm just going to make this happy for a minute and then we'll start copying things across. I'm just going to move this down. DNS prefix. Not sure about that. Enable RBAC. Yes, we should always do that. Kubernetes version. We should always use the latest. So I think I'm just going to comment that out. I think that creates the latest version. You probably want to hard code this once you're going to production, so you know what version is always out there. But then that's a maintenance nightmare because you're going to have to update those all the time. And then this is where they're setting up SSH. We don't want to do that. I don't know what else you can set here. Nothing of interest, so I'm just going to delete that. Node resource group name. Name of the resource group containing agent node pools. So I'm just going to copy the resource group name. Where's get resource group? And go over here and we'll call this application name Kubernetes. Whoops. So the first one is called Kubernetes. This is going to be Kubernetes nodes. That's what that resource group is going to be called. And we don't have a service principal. I'll keep the Kubernetes version there. We might want to specify that at some point. We'll come back to the cluster node settings in a second. I just want to make sure I have all this correct. Name, count 3, max pods, DNS prefix, name. So they are using the same DNS prefix as this name variable. Where is that tab? Oh my god, I've lost it. Here we go. This name variable here, it's just the project name, so that'll be just this. We want a better name than that, so we're not going to go with that. Let's keep going. Enable pod security policy. No, that's been deprecated, so you don't want to turn that on. Linux profile, so we're just going to delete stuff that we don't need here. Service principal, no, we don't need that. Kubernetes version, no. Role-based access control. I'm going to do some more reading on that and come back to that. Network profile, we need that. Add-ons profile, OMS agent, and this is where we pass in the log analytics workspace, so we need that as well. So we get some logs out of new input map, OMS agent, new what's going on here? Can I do that? Nope. What is an input map? I'm not debugging. It's a bit like a dictionary of type string something. So what do I do here? I think that's right. So this is going to be our OMS agent. I think I passed that in here. And I don't know what I'll pass in this thing. I could have done this later. Fired up the cluster first. Input map. Enabled true. So we want enabled true and config equals new input map of string. And we had something similar in the Azure Container Apps thing. So I'm just going to quickly have a look here to see how that was done. So we created a workspace. And where did we pass that in? Okay. So we didn't pass that in any special way. Okay, that didn't really help. Input map is a dictionary also, so that's just log analytics workspace ID is workspace dot ID. I think that's how that works. So that was a load of stringly typed stuff. So am I missing something here? I'm not sure why that's complaining. I think I have the brackets all correct. This is the key value pair. So Yeah, not sure what's going on there. We'll find out in a sec when it's built. Expected expression. Yeah, weird. That's pretty weird. Not sure what that's all about. In terms of our cluster, I do need to fix that though. Let's see. That's so weird. I'm just going to come back to that. I just want to move on now. I want to create a cluster before we finish up for today. I'm going to create 2 agents, maximum number of pods, mode is system. I don't know what mode means. Mode of an agent pool. Name of the agent pool is going to be agent pool. OS disk size 30 gigabytes. We're going to do Linux. Virtual machines, we're going to use virtual machine scale sets, agent pool type. I don't know why they use strings sometimes in the examples when they have enums also that you can set way better. And I think you can do that here also. Agent pool mode. It's great for documentation also. So this one, there's no documentation on that, but okay, it's a system agent pool, and we have a VM size standard DS2 V2. I think B2S is a smaller one, so I'm just going to go with the cheapest. And V subnet ID equals subnet.id. Cool. We could create another agent pool here. This is, so what they've done in the example is they have a DS4, which is a bigger machine, I think, and a smaller machine here. So we should probably give these agent pools better names. So we've just called it agent pool as if like there's only one, but you could have multiple agent pools with different VM sizes. And we'll come on to why in a minute. There is a reason why you would want multiple agent pools. What other settings do we have to play with? Oh, loads. Yeah, we do need to come in here and set up availability zones so that we distribute our agents across availability zones, so we get a bit more resilience. We also need to node labels, some default node labels. That's interesting. Scale set priority. There's a bunch of stuff in here we need to set. We'll set tags equals get tags location, and we'll not forget to put tags in here also. And I think that's it. Oh, we forgot the network profile. So profile equals new. And I think you can just we're going to just copy and paste some of this over here, in here, uncomment that. and fix the case because we are on as C# and we want to use the enum here. We want to use Azure networking rather than the kubenet networking. DNS service IP. Docker bridge CIDR. Oh, I've got somebody at the door. I think that's my son coming back from school, maybe. DNS service IP. We've got a different case there. Equals that. Put the equals in there as well to make it happy. There we go. And we chose 10.0. .2.254. I'm not sure why these particular IPs and so on have been selected. It's a bit odd. Oh, you know what? One other thing I've just realized, we probably don't want one virtual network per Kubernetes cluster as well. So yeah, you probably want to pull that out. We'll come back to that though. I think that's enough for us to get started. Let's see if that works and then call it a day. We didn't set an output, so that will give us our Kubernetes cluster. What else did they do? Create a static public IP for the service load balancer. Not sure why they are, what that's all about. Let's find out if we could scroll further down. Do we find that used anywhere? Nowhere used. I'm not sure what that's about. It's not even exporting it, so it's not being used anywhere. kubeconfig admin is being exported. Cluster ID, cluster name, cluster resource group is also being exported. And now we're finally in Kubernetes land. So we are newing up a provider, an admin role, creating some cluster role bindings, cluster namespaces, app namespace, quota namespace, role namespace, with a bunch of like Kubernetes type stuff being created here. So let's scroll up and go to number 4. So this is where I think it's creating some, what is this? Enable the monitoring diagnostic control plane component logs with all metrics. This is something to do with log analytics, setting up log analytics to collect metrics. So we can plug that in, that's not an issue. App services, what's app services? This is creating a MongoDB account, Cosmos DB account, using MongoDB as its kind of communication provider. And then, okay, so I think this is just hooking up communication to MongoDB, to Cosmos DB using the MongoDB provider. Config app namespace, connection strings, Mongo helpers, data. It's creating, okay, so it's creating a Kubernetes secret for that. Okay, that's interesting. So we're basically almost done. If this worked. Has a problem, agent pool profiles.name does not match expression. Okay, so once again hit by naming convention issues. So what is this saying? We're only allowed, I think that's 11 characters, which is really short. So we'll just call this the default pool. And if we get another node pool, we'll call it something else. Let's try that again. In the meantime, we might be able to code up some of the outputs for the cluster as well. We don't really need to output the subnet ID. Really, what we want is the kube config. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Kubernetes. Yeah. How do you get the kube config out? Let's go back to this simple example. Cluster, get kube config. Oh, it seems like it's kind of difficult to do. Let's have a look at this function. Resource group name, cluster name. And they've got some weird formatting going on here. So I think we should split this up into multiple lines. It's a bit hard to read. Sometimes doing things on one line is not always the right thing to do. So what is this invoking? List of credentials. We'll just call it output. Credentials encoded, data, UTF-8 get string. The formatting is all messed up, so let's fix that really quick. Cool. So get kube config, resource group name, dot name, we'll call this kube configs. What is this complaining about now? Managed cluster. Required parameter service principal profile is missing. Target service principal profile. I thought that was not required. Or maybe it was. But it's contained in this guy over here, so maybe we can take that and use it. My memory's failing me. Maybe this was needed. What is going on with this indentation here? Okay, so let's get this service principal. So we need to create an application service principal. What's this password used for? Password.results, ADA password. That's what that is used for. So we need all of that section over there. And we'll stick that right in the middle there. And I think what we need is those NuGet packages back again that I removed. Because I was messing around with this before, and this is how I managed to get those types that I needed. So if I can create an application now, you're gonna let me do that? That's your AD. Display name. Why do you need a display name if you have a name here? Type on namespace application cannot be found. No, now we can. And we've got our I'll give these some good names in a second. This is the issue I had last time. The API has changed and some things are missing. So you don't seem to be able to set a value here for the password or an end date. So by default, a service principal password this expires after a year. So this password doesn't seem to be used anywhere because it's not used here. And yeah, it's really need to figure out what's going on there. Let's try that again. See if that works, and if this works, we'll call it a day. I try to keep these things short for about an hour long, but we've overrun slightly today. Building, downloading plugin, Azure AD plugin. It's weird that it has to do that, given that it's just a NuGet package. Duplicate resource URN, random password. Oh, okay. We didn't give it a nice name, so we need to give everything a nice name. Service principal. don't actually need this password, so I'm just going to comment that out for now. See if that works. Some of these names might be too long. I decided to put the application name at the beginning just because these resources are not going to live in a resource group. They're going to live in Azure Active Directory. So they're not bucketed in any way. So we'll just fire that off again one more time. Should be unique enough now because the location is in there and the environment. This time we shouldn't need to download the Azure AD plugin. So it should run a bit quicker. Oh, no. Loads of errors. Display name is required but was not given a value. Okay. We'll give it a display name. We'll pull this out. We'll call that. Pass that in there. Also pass that there. And are there any other errors? Another error is that's just the same. One more time. So some of this needs to be cleaned up now, but we'll come on to that later. We can split things up. The virtual network, I think we need to pull up into the common resource group. And then, yeah, that'd be a lot simpler. We need to figure out what's going on here with the OMS agent thing. And maybe split things up into these resources, like I said earlier. So we'll do that next time. We can also set some better values here. There's loads of configuration options in Azure. We need to figure out what's going on here with the network profile. These just seem like random values that they set up in the example. I'm not sure why they did that. Kube configs. Creating, looks good. Looks like it's created some service principals. The subnets are no longer outputs. We've switched the outputs to be kube configs. Service principal not found. Service principal client ID not found in Active Directory tenant. Please see blah 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 for help. Yeah, something not right with the service principal configuration that we have. Client ID. What is this saying? Are you going to let me navigate to it or not? Client ID, client secret. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do here. As I say, the API has changed, so could be hitting some of those issues. Application ID. Tags. We forgot to set tags on things. Need to do that. Our test is going to fail. That checks that we have tags on everything. Service principal with client ID not found in Active Directory tenant. Maybe I can just check over here in Active Directory. Azure Active Directory. Where are the applications? I can't remember. It's all a bit. That's not what I want. App registrations. Here we go. Oh, it didn't add something random on the end. So we can remove that dash. So what's the error saying? Error is talking about client ID, this, that exists. Excuse the bell there in the background. So the no client secret was created. That's the issue. That's the issue right there. I'll investigate that and we'll carry on with that next time. So in the meantime, thanks for watching. Next time we'll have a look at finally actually creating our cluster and finding out what was the issue, why we couldn't create a service principal password. Maybe finding out why the API has changed to the point where we can't set a value for the password ourselves. And yeah, maybe digging in a bit deeper to setting up proper Kubernetes defaults for various values and discussing the pros and cons of the different values that you can set. And before then, I'll read up on some of the documentation to see how far we get. So thanks everyone for watching.